I may not have seen all the good Blumhouse movies, but this might be one of the best movies they've made so far. Welcome back to my 2 cents, everyone. And in preparation for the up and coming sequel, I will be giving you my 2 cents on The Black Phone. Now, like everyone who's a horror fan, my relationship with Blumhouse has been a toxic one. Sometimes they'll release some of my favorite horror movies ever, and sometimes they'll release some of the worst horror movies of the past decade. But thankfully, this is one of their best. Starting off with the characters, of course, we follow a kid named Finney, who is played by Mason Thames, who is making quite a name for himself in the film industry. Finney is the kid in school who always gets picked on and doesn't ever stand up for himself. He just runs away from all his problems or he just lays down and takes his punishment. Not to mention his home life is terrible. Ever since his mom died, his father has become an alcoholic and has been very abusive of both him and his sister Gwen. Finney keeps hearing about kids that he knows in the neighborhood that keep going missing, and they're being taken by a man only known as the Grabber, until eventually he himself gets grabbed. Mason Thames puts on a great performance as Finney, especially when he is trapped in the Grabber's basement trying to find a way to escape. He does a great job at really expressing his emotions and really showing how a young teenage boy would react in this horrifying situation. But in my opinion, Finney is not the best character in this movie. That honor would go to Gwen, played by Madeline McGraw. Gwen is probably the toughest young lady I've ever seen. She is the complete polar opposite of Finney. She doesn't take shit from nobody. She always stands up for herself. She doesn't even take shit from the detectives that are trying to find the Grabber. And the reason these detectives are trying to talk to Gwen is because she has some psychic ability to see future events before they happen through her dreams. Her ability kind of reminds me of Danny's Shining ability in the Shining, except she uses her dreams to see the future rather than Danny just seeing premonitions in his mind. It's believed she got these powers from her late mother, and at least Finney and Gwen's father believes that it is these abilities that caused their mom to take her own life, which is why throughout the film, Gwen's dad is so adamant on her never talking about her dreams, never using them to predict the future, and hammering home that these are just dreams. He beats her, he verbally abuses her, and he does this because he's afraid that if she keeps having these dreams and keeps believing in them, that she will end up like her mom. Madeline gives an Oscar-worthy performance as Gwen for an, at the time, 13-year-old girl. And I know the ghost kids are how Finney actually escapes the basement, but the cops would have no idea where to find Finney if it wasn't for Gwen and her premonitions. Which brings us to our titular killer himself, who is played by Ethan Hawke. And I swear to God, if I get one comment saying that's the guy from Fortnite, I'm gonna fuck. Ethan Hawke, to nobody's surprise, is really good at playing an insane child murderer that honestly reminds me a lot of John Wayne Gacy, snatching up kids by pretending to be a clumsy magician, knocking them out, and throwing him in his black van, which is quite the change from the usual white van. And in this day and age of slashers, it's hard for any slasher villain to stand out. With most modern slashers wearing the typical all black outfit with a Spirit Halloween mask. But to me, what makes the Grabber really stand out is how his mask changes depending on his emotion that he's feeling in that moment, or the type of fear he's really trying to instill into Finney or the other kids he's killing. Also, the black balloons are a nice little touch. One thing I feel like is kind of underappreciated about this movie is how they make the Grabber completely unlikable and make him a pure evil killer. Because these days, most slasher villains have to have some sort of sympathetic reason to be the way they are. They have to have some sort of tragic backstory, or they have to have someone who's more evil to try to convince them to be the evil person they become. And I'm glad they don't go that route, and they don't try to make you sympathize with a child murderer. He just kills kids for the love of the game. I love that every single actor truly gives it their all in this movie, especially the kid actors. And I say that because in most movies, you'll find at least one performance that you think, oh, that could have been better, or there could have been someone better for this job. In this movie, I think that everyone fits their roles perfectly and everyone puts on a great performance. There's not one performance that I think is lackluster or lesser than anyone else's in the movie. Now, the story of this film, as I've stated earlier, is Finney gets grabbed by the grabber and is thrown into a nightmare situation, and with the help of some of his ghost friends on the black phone in the basement and his sister, find ways to escape the basement and end the grabber's killing spree for good. Even without the supernatural element to the film, I think this story is great. Like, an adult being trapped in a serial killer's basement would already be terrifying enough for an adult. I can only imagine how terrifying that situation would be for someone as young as Finney. It would be a whole nother level of terror. But by adding in that supernatural element, it makes the film all the more terrifying and all the more interesting. Because if this was just a movie about a kid being kidnapped by a serial killer, sure, people would still go watch it because it's a slasher movie. But I don't think people would have been as interested in the movie if they didn't add those supernatural elements to make it pop a little bit. I would go so far to say that the ghost kids in this movie are more terrifying than the grabber, even if they are trying to save Finney. Which I just want to say, I love the little training montage with Robin and Finney in this movie. I think that moment might be one of the standout moments of the movie, because even if it was for a brief moment, Finney was the only friend Robin had. So it was nice to kind of see their last moment together and having Robin teach him how to fight. And it was both creepy and also kind of sad to see all these dead kids talking to Finney and trying to remember who they were and giving him all these tips on how to escape. And for the most part, all of them saying, "There's no way out for me. It's all up to you now." Except for that one dick. Also, seeing Gwen's response to all of this is great, because even though she was told not to talk about her dreams and not to take them as fact, she begs Jesus to give her a dream to help find Finney. And when the dreams don't make sense or it doesn't feel like they're really giving her anything, she questions if her prayers are being heard by anybody, which leads her to confront her dad and begs him to let her use her dreams to help find Finney because she believes it is the only way she can find him. Like, seeing the struggle on both sides, with Finney struggling to build the courage to escape and finally fight his own battles, and seeing Gwen have sort of a crisis of faith and trying so desperately to save her brother. And I think seeing those two point of views in the story really make this story so compelling. Also, that ending did get me to cry a few tears, I'm not gonna lie. Real quick, before I move on to the blood money segment of the video, I just wanted to briefly talk about how much I love the use of analog video for the dream sequences. It makes these scenes almost have like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre feel to them, and honestly was kind of ahead of all the buzz that was eventually going to surround analog horror on the internet. Now, there aren't a lot of on-screen kills in this movie because, well, no one wants to see a kid get killed. Terrifier. So while I feel like I should give the Blood Money Award to the grabber, I'm gonna give it to Max, the grabber's brother. His death kind of comes out of nowhere, and even though I knew he was gonna die eventually, it still has a kind of shock to it. And I think the effects on the kill were solid. He even does a little stumble before he dies. Overall, I think The Black Phone is a great original slasher with some good scares, some phenomenal acting, and some great cinematography. I would say that this film is definitely worth paying double for. And that's my review of The Black Phone. I hope you guys really enjoyed this review. And next week, I'm going to review this movie's sequel, of course, The Black Phone 2, that comes out this weekend. And I'm going to try to at least do 2 or 3 more reviews before we get to the Halloween review. Be sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss any of those reviews. And as always, give me your 2 cents on The Black Phone in the comments below. I love you guys, and I'll see you soon.